Hello and welcome to the Animation Communication Podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode contains some mild adult language.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Animation Communication. I'm your host KP or Rachel, depending on if you know me or not. With me I have my friend Lauren, as usual. Say hi, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
You can't keep on using the same joke over and over again.
I know. I'm just gonna be a minor bird repeating it over and over again. But no, I'll come up with something different. Let's do a take two on that. So ask me again.
Okay, and with me I have my co-host Lauren. Say hi, Lauren.
Hola.
Okay, that's fine. And also our guest this week is one of my favorite people. I think he's really talented. Character designer Steven Silver, who also, for those who don't know, did Danny Phantom and the most important thing, Kim Possible. Say hi, Steven. How are you doing?
Hello, good. I'm doing great.
How are you surviving this pandemic that we're in so far? Are you keeping yourself busy?
Surviving, yeah. It's like one of these things where, like I told you guys earlier, I feel like I've been in quarantine for the last 12, 13 years because I just work from home. So it doesn't really feel too different to me. You know, I'm just at home every day anyway. The only thing is not going out to get as much snacks or food, which I like doing, but that's okay. I'll survive.
Yeah, there's always the joke that I've been seeing around on social media where, you know, even the introverts are just like, I wouldn't go outside anyway, but now I can't go outside and now that's bothering me, you know? So, but yeah, so obviously the film and animation industry is kind of dormant right now, but we do have a couple of news segments before we get into the main discussion of what is character design and like how to break down character design and how to art. So Lauren, like give me the news.
Well, as far as we know, there seems to be word of a new pilot in the works by Dan Povenmire's Jeff Swampy Marsh. If you know those names, already, then cool. If not, they are the creators of Phineas and Ferb and also Milo Murphy's Law. So they're in the works of a new show together, and we don't know what studio's working on it quite yet. It could be Surfer Jack. We don't know yet, but we do know that they are working on a pilot right now together. So keep your eyes peeled for any news coming up for that. We'll keep you posted on it. And then also we have a little bit of word on production for the Tom and Jerry movie that's supposed to be coming out in December of 2020. That's if all goes well and we are all allowed back into theaters by then. So we'll see. But it's supposed to be, according to director Tim Story, it's supposed to be stylized kind of like Into the Spider-Verse, where it's going to be 3D modeling with 2D effects applied. So it's made to look 2D, but it's actually a 3D model. It's really good to see more and more movies trying to implement this stylistic approach to 3D animation, so that it doesn't feel so much just like a 3D model there. This is new ground, and so I'm really personally excited to see it. And as long as this movie isn't a repeat of the 1992 movie, that would be great.
The joke that I made is before we started recording is like just what the world needs, another Tom and Jerry movie. I only saw bits of, like, the only thing I know about the 92 version is that like Tony J meme. I wish Tony J was around. He was cool. But anyway, so that, and then I know the Willy Wonka Tom and Jerry movie exists, which is basically isn't it like a shot for shot of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but it just has Tom and Jerry in it.
Yeah,
I guess.
And then also Slugworth gets a musical number because sure, why not?
They had the actor who played Slugworth in Harry Potter be in there.
No.
Slugworth the character.
Is the character. the guy who's
There's
supposed
too
to
many
be
Slugworths.
yeah. No, the Slugworth that's supposed to be, trying
Oh,
to
the guy who bribes.
he's trying to bribe the kids for the Gobstopper. Yeah. So
Okay. I don't know. But who owns Tom and Jerry now?
it's still owned by Turner, so technically Warner Brothers has it.
Okay, I really wish there was something new they could try to do, except just like it's same thing like with the Scooby Doo movies, where it's just let's just keep on making Scooby Doo movies and Scooby Doo stuff. And I won't talk about it too much because Steven works on a Scooby Doo property right now. So I do like
it just becomes a safety thing. I think a lot of times when you see these remakes, again, the brand is already built, and I found that unfortunately, a lot of people don't like to try new things, because their head becomes on the chopping block if all of a sudden it doesn't do well, but at least they can say, oh, well, Scooby-Doo, Tom and Jerry. But it would have been cool if they did the Popeye one, if you guys ever saw
Oh man, that would have been great.
It kills me every time I see that animation test. Like, we could have had that.
Yeah. Fun fact about Phineas and Ferb, Phineas and Ferb actually killed Kim Possible.
Yeah. Did you know that, Lauren?
No, I'm just saying what.
Oh, you're what? Yeah. So Phineas and Ferb came right after Kim Possible, and essentially, I mean, Steven, jump in if I'm getting my history inaccurately like transcribed, but I think there was some new executives coming in, and maybe they were toying with the idea of a 5th season, but then the new execs wanted to kind of make their own or have their own thing that they've kind of risen up, or just have their own brand of this is what we did in this era. So Phineas and Ferb came in, and they actually took the place of Kim Possible on the block too.
Yeah,
So.
that's it. That's kind of like what happened. It was just new blood, and it says, well, Kim Possible wasn't our show. We weren't the creators necessarily behind it, so they wanted to have something that was their own that they were bringing to the table. Yeah.
I think the landscape is changing a lot now with Disney Plus and with streaming services in general, because the Proud Family of all things got renewed for a new season. So I think my guess is that the live action movie is still relatively new and it didn't perform the best from looking into it. So I imagine if they're going to revive Kim Possible, their bet was with the live action movie, but because that was like kind of as far as results, that movie, then they'll probably wait a couple more years before they try anything with that. But Kim Possible, I feel like, is a much safer reboot or recontinuation idea than like something like the Proud Family, except like you got to get that nostalgia dollar somehow, I guess.
Yeah, they're bringing back a lot of old shows now. That's kind of just all around Nickelodeon, Disney. Again, it's like building upon the brand. It's just like, okay, well, this was successful then, and it'll be a whole new generation. So it's like all the kids that grew up with Danny Phantom, Kim Possible, and all that, now they're older enough, and now there's new kids that are 12 years old, because it was 12, 13 years, more than that, I think, already when it first came out. So now those kids are now 11, 12, 13 to see something.
And I think it's also interesting, even if it's on a new show, like the new DuckTales is recontextualizing like the old Disney afternoon, where they have characters from Tailspin and characters from, I think, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers was just in a recent episode of this recording.
Yeah.
So I think it's the kids that grew up with that stuff, and that now they're inside the studios, and they're just like, well, we have the rights for Chip and Dale and whatever, why not? And so it reintroduces them for a new audience. So I think it's kind of an interesting time, and I'm just sitting on my butt just waiting, like, when will Treasure Planet finally like get something?
Yeah, it'll all come back. It'll all come back.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, like, as we run out of things to remake, Disney will start looking to the less traditional films like Atlantis and Treasure Planet, and something, that they were they were okay successes at the box office, but, how many times can they remake Aladdin, or Lion King really poorly, so, it's an interesting time in the industry, assuming that, it continues after all this coronavirus stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the good thing about animation and other good animation news is that nearly all the productions, most of them are all still in production and they're going, and all the artists can work at home and they're making it work, as opposed to live action
Mm-hmm.
where they're in trouble. But the television animation and feature is still going. You know, it doesn't need to stop. So that's a really great thing to have that ability. You know, we just need our computers. We just need the FTP sites. We just need to connect that way, and we can produce what we need to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was going to add, it's also a great time for indie artists, maybe making content for YouTube or other streaming platforms, where, you know, this is a time where, you know, everyone is forced to be at home, and, you know, they're streaming shows and they're watching a lot of YouTube. So like, I'm trying to look at this positively and be like, well, you know, maybe the content will get a little bit of a spike, because, you know, what else are you going to do? You
Yeah,
can't
absolutely.
go anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. No, it will, for sure.
Yeah.
Are you experiencing a spike a little bit on your YouTube stuff, Stephen?
You know, I actually, I don't keep track of like any of that stuff. So it's hard for me to kind of say, like, I don't look at analytics or anything. I'm just doing what I'm doing. And, you know, if people come in and jump on in, that's, you know, I mean, that's great. But it is one of those things where I realized, in all honesty, the importance of letting go of all that stuff. And it's even when I look through Instagram, you know how Instagram, you can start looking and you start just instantly going to how many people have looked at your post or a post, right? And it's just like, and when they were talking about that one time about getting rid of how many people have liked your post, I think it's a great idea, because I think it makes people judge whether they're going to continue looking at something or not, you know. So all of a sudden they see 5 likes on something. Well, now they're not going to give it any traction. But all of a sudden they see there's 500 likes. Well, now I'm going to spend a little bit more time looking, only because it says 500 likes. So even when I flip through Instagram, I just look at the images. I try to never look at almost like the comments, and this is when I'm looking at other people's stuff I'm talking about. You know, I'm not looking at the comments. I'm not looking at the how many people have liked that person's post, and I'm making my own judgment if I flip through it, whether I'm gonna like it or not, if it just grabs me, right? But I think that's something where it kind of helps you keep creating, because I feel like a lot of people stop creating because they don't feel enough people are seeing their content. And I get people all the time, even on my YouTube channel, go, I can't believe you don't have more followers, you know. And it's just like, yeah, well, you know, the people who do follow me and the people who do listen, that's great. And I'm thankful and I'm grateful for that. But I'm not in control of if people find what I'm doing interesting or not, you know.
Right. And I feel like it's just kind of a real detergent on new artists that, you know, they judge their success by who is following them and how many people are liking that thing. And, you know, I think it's just like, at the end of the day, it's fun to kind of have an audience, and it's fun to have that interaction, and it's fun to have people say, "Hey, I love your work. You know, you're the best thing ever." But it's not the end all be all if you don't have an audience, or you're growing slowly, or whatever the case. As long as it's kind of as long as you're happy doing it, you know, and as long as you feel like you're you know. So that's what I really like about the podcast, specifically, where it's not too big of a deal, but it's here if people want to educate themselves, if people want to learn about animation. But I'm trying not to force it like on my main content too much, because, you know, especially podcasts, like, without the audio visuals, some people will like it and some people won't like it, and, you know, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's just very important. Just, again, you just create because that's what you want to create. Don't worry about the outcome. Just, are you doing it for the love of it? Or even just know why you're even doing it. You know, why are you doing it? So if you're like, oh, I'm doing this because I want, you know, 1 million followers, you know, and that's your intention. Well, then maybe you're going to try to create some sort of content and that's all you care about. But why do you care about that? Well, because if I got 1 million followers, then people are going to pay me to advertise and do all this other stuff. So again, you might have your intention to that, but maybe your intention is, I just really enjoy getting together with my friend and doing this. I really enjoy just putting out this content and it feels good. I enjoy doing it because it's like a form of therapy for me. Where again, when people are just so focused on, they could have 500 friends, 1,000 friends on an Instagram or Facebook and only 10 people like it. That crushes their momentum. That crushes their desire to really keep creating, because now they care about the numbers of who's looking, even live. Like when you look at Facebook Live or something, and people are, oh my, I only got 16 people watching, and then you start, then their mind starts to go, well, there's only 16 people watching, it's not enough people, I wish I had 50, I wish I had 100. If you allow that to get to you, it's things like that where I go, live would be so much better if it didn't say how many people were watching. If people want to comment, that's great. But because I see too many people get caught up on that, they'll say something while they're on there. They'll go, well, it looks like there's only 16 people. I got to wait till there's 20 people, and they're doing this. So you're sort of like destroying your own creativity because you care too much about what other people think or say, or if they're there. And that's what humans want. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to know that people are listening to this. Do they hear me? Do they see my artwork? Do they understand me? And it's just a common human trait that we have to learn as artists to just really try to get a hold of and take control of, and not let that be the end all be all.
Yeah. And the other point is it's just healthy to not like define yourself by, who is viewing and how much, and like what is how much, because like you always want more, and like, being in the circle of like, the YouTubers around 100K, there's always the YouTubers that are just like, well, what about this, or what about 500K or whatever, and like, it's just like there's no defined stuff, because you always want to be the next person who's getting more and more. You see like X person down the street and you're just like, oh, why aren't I him? And I'm just like, but you have X, and I'm just like, but I want Y, and I'm like, where's the line,
And then it becomes just an unhealthy competition. And I think competition is healthy in the sense that it gives you a desire, it gives you something to attain, to be like, oh my God, that guy is so good, their artwork is so amazing that I got to get that. I want to be as good as that. So there's a health in that, but then there's not so healthy in the form of letting competition be your driving force, that you can't even be happy for people that are doing better than you, and that they do have more followers, and that they are doing that. It's all of a sudden becomes a frustration. And I don't know that that's healthy at all. And that's why I always believe in just be your best, do your best. And there was a guy that I quote all the time. I can't remember his name. He was an author, but he said, be yourself, because everyone else is already taken. And that's what it is. It's like, stop trying to be the other person. It's just like, if you can enjoy what it is you're diving into, that's the success. And unfortunately, people, they know it inside their mind. That's what success is. But we got this perceived version of what we think success is. Oh, success is the person who has the job at the studio. Oh, the success is the person who's got 100,000 followers. Oh, the success is the person who's got the car and the house and all these things. But that's not really, because we see all those people. We see the people who have the jobs who are miserable. We see the people who have the house and the cars who are miserable. We see the people with the wife and the kids who are miserable. We see all these things, and it's like you can't judge it by that. But we all know inherently what is success. But success is happiness. Am I happy with what I'm doing? Am I happy with the job, the project I'm working on right now? Am I happy with the relationship I'm in right now? Am I happy with my friends? And we all know that's the truth, but we have this other Facebook, Instagram image or life that people think that, oh, that's when people think I'm successful. It's not real.
Yeah, I think
I gotta prove to my mom that I'm hot stuff, yo. So.
That's why it's like a blessing and a curse to have social media be so involved in our lives now. It's like it can, if you use it right, it's a great tool and a great asset. But if you get too engrossed in it and you lose yourself in it, it's like then it's just a horrible thing. But it's like, again, it's like as long as you know how to use it right and use it responsibly, then it's amazing, and then you can, and it'll, if anything, it may even help you, achieve that, try to strive for that happiness that you want, which is, as long as you're able to do what you want to do and be happy doing it,
Yeah. So yeah, just it is. It's so much just enjoying the process of it. Don't have expectations. Let it kind of be, and just know, hey, I'm doing my best.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the Boy Scout motto, right? Do your best. It's like I'm doing my best. I'm doing my podcast. I'm doing this. I'm working on a drawing a day. Whatever it may be for you. Do you feel like you're giving it your best, or do you feel like I'm wasting so much time on social media that I'm looking into everyone else's life and I'm looking at all the other kids, so to speak, playing on the playground, and I'm sitting on the sidelines and not necessarily joining in? Am I so consumed with everyone else's life and action instead of putting that time and saying, I'm going to work on my own YouTube channel. I'm going to work on my own podcast. I'm going to work on my own portfolio. I'm going to work on my own, whatever, you name it. I don't care what it is. Maybe you want to build boats or something. Well, it doesn't matter. Like you said, with what your podcast deals with, it's about music. It's about dance. It's about everything. It's like voice acting. What do you want to do? What is that passion? Stop worrying about what the end result's going to be and just work on what you feels good,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'll just add a note for people that are new to the podcast. We also talk about this specifically in the fan fiction episode too. So if you care and want to go back and are like, who are these people and why are they talking to me? Then I recommend that episode. It's a good one. So anyway, that's not important. So we got a little bit off tangent, but let's pull it back. So
It's good discussion.
Stephen is a yeah, it's a podcast. That's what you do, right?
Exactly.
So anyway, so Stephen is a very prolific. I think he's the go-to person for just general character design. So Stephen, I'm going to ask you to break down what character design is for people that aren't familiar, people maybe that are new to being an artist, or people that are not necessarily visual artists, and like what the general process requires, and then we'll get a little bit into your history, and then Lauren, if I'm missing anything, please feel free to yell at me, because I will probably forget.
Yeah, I almost think what I like to just tell people, it's just we all know who we're talking about. Scooby-Doo, we all know Scooby-Doo. So the character designer's job is, once there's a script, but there's not always a script, sometimes it's just a premise, just a little inkling of an idea, a little concept. And it's the character designer's job to design what that character looks like in this universe, in this world. So Scooby-Doo, what is Scooby-Doo? What type of dog is Scooby-Doo? What sort of style is Scooby-Doo? How are we going to, and this is the role of the character designer, is to really just, out of your imagination, create what these characters look like. You're kind of like a casting director in the movie industry, where someone will say, hey, we're doing the Terminator. The Terminator is like Arnold Schwarzenegger before they knew it was him, and is this big guy in that. So they know what they're looking for, and it's up to the character designer, once he gets a script, to visually draw out what that character is actually going to look like. So you're in charge, especially in the beginning, of finding the look and the style, because it doesn't exist yet. Sometimes you'll come on as a character designer where a show is already designed. Now it's your job just to match the style. And on a daily routine of a character designer's job is, number one, to design the main cast. So say it's the main cast of Scooby-Doo, and you design all those guys. And now your job is working off storyboards, but also designing the villains, the ghosts, the incidental characters, the animals, whatever they may be. That's going to be your job.
Mm-hmm. And I think character design in general is one of those jobs that it sounds easy on paper, but when you actually are trying to conceptualize, especially for, I guess it depends on the person, but for me, I think especially trying to find a new style for a show that isn't defined yet, versus something like going to Scooby-Doo where you already have a preconception about how male and female characters look, what kind of what the character personality says about the build of the character. Are they like Daphne? Are they more nerdy like Velma? How is that influencing their personality, influencing how they look, compared to a totally new property where you basically have to pitch ideas until the guy up front basically says, well, I finally like that, and how many variations you have to go through in order to make sure someone is essentially happy who sometimes doesn't know what they want.
Oh, that's quite often. I think that's the most that's quite really the most frustrating part about it is the worst people to work with are people who don't know what it is that they want, who aren't, they're indecisive. And the best people to work with are the decision makers, the people who can do something. They go, yeah, that's it. I'm feeling that. Now go to that next level. But it is frustrating because sometimes you'll work and you design things and you think, man, this is cool. Like you're happy with it. And then you find that a lot of times people just want to go back to the generic, or they want to go back to what they've already seen before because they knew that worked. And it gets harder and harder sometimes to push things, and that's why the only way to do that is really for yourself on your own. There is an advantage to having people who are good and decisive, because then they can sort of lead you in the right direction and make something better. Where you could do your first designs and be like, I don't know if it's good enough. But I think really just making sure you're working on your own stuff is the best way. But I find, more and more, the most frustrating for me always is working on a design or trying to come up with a look and people not reacting to it the way that you'd hope that they would, because they get nervous.
Yeah, direction is so important, because it's the same role can apply to, like, even if you're like an artist and you're taking a commission, you can't have a client that goes, "Oh, draw whatever you feel like." Because odds are they have something in their head that they want to see. Like, I want to see these characters together. Okay, well, what do you want them doing? I don't know, whatever feels right. I'm like, yeah, that's you don't want to swing with that. You have to be more specific. Otherwise, you're going to get a little more complaints coming back than you want. And especially not when that's something not what you asked for in the first place. Like, I didn't ask for this drama. It's like, you just have to tell me what you want.
Yeah. Well, and what I do want to say too for anyone out there is just, I always hear different artists say, "Oh, I want to be a children's book illustrator," and that they're waiting for that job to come. So they're trying to, just get that job, and that's all they're focused on, not realizing that the reality is, if you just keep waiting to get that book illustrator, children's book job, you're going to end up working for a client who's going to give them notes. You're not going to get to draw the characters that you want to do. You're not going to be able to do it the way that you want to do. You're going to have to follow their lead. You're going to come up with some cool stuff, and they're going to say no. The most important thing you can ever do is create your own children's book. Right? So do that first. Just build it and they will come, so to speak. It's like, create don't wait to become the children's. Someday I want to be a children's book illustrator. What are you waiting for? Just start now. Just work on your own book. Create it the way you're going to do it. Make your own deadlines. Set your own goals. Create your own style. Do all that stuff, because otherwise you're going to be very disappointed when you actually get the job. And that's the same thing with character design. If you're not working on your own designs and trying to figure that out and flush it out and being versatile, doing all that, once you do get that job for the client and they say, well, now, okay, you got hired on SpongeBob. Well, now you just got to draw the SpongeBob style all day long. It's just like, oh man, but I kind of want to, no, don't question me. That's what your job is. That's what you're doing. Don't complain. This is what you wanted. Oh, but I wish I don't want to hear it. That's your job.
Yep.
And I see so many, I talk to a lot of, like, I say kids, but, kids as in, like, 18-year-old. Me and Lauren are both in our mid-20s. So, like, kids is a flexible term, but I see a lot of people, who are fan artists specifically, who are afraid to kind of get out of their comfort zone a little bit, and like afraid to try a new style, or they're afraid to, like I always try to like advocate, experimenting a little bit and trying to practice different styles from different shows, just because, there is a lot of flexibility when you're doing something where it's your own thing, and you can just kind of design the characters as you see fit. But compared to like if you are working for a show on SpongeBob and you're a storyboard artist, or maybe not a storyboard artist, but if you have to be on model for a specific assignment, then you're not gonna you're gonna be like a fish out of water and being like, I want to draw this way, but now I can't
Hmm.
But to be fair, you probably wouldn't be in that position if you could only draw one style anyway. But, go to life drawing classes is the end of my spiel. Like, practice drawing from real life too. You can still draw your fan art, like,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Well, that's the
But,
big thing that I would say too. Is just be versatile. If you want to be a character designer, just make sure you're versatile, which means just draw multiple styles, be able to adapt and show that range in your portfolio.
Hmm.
And because when you're working with a client anyway, and if a client does come to you and says, "Hey, we love you. We're working on this new property. This is the concept. We'd love to see your take." They just don't want to see one idea. They want to see multiple variations.
Hmm.
And so the more you can provide that, unless they're coming to you specifically and saying, "Hey, we love your style for this specific thing and we want you just to do that." And there's some artists that just do that. You get a guy like Carter Goodrich who's just does Carter Goodrich. So every
Hmm.
time someone's hiring him, they know they're hiring Carter Goodrich, and he's not going to give you a whole different style. You're getting, and that's what you're buying into. At other time, then there's the other character designer, which is hey, we see that you draw multiple different styles and variations. We just want to see what you come up with on your take.
Hmm.
Yeah. I had a train of thought, but I lost it. But yeah, I think. Oh, I remember. So I think in general, there's a big divide too, compared to like working in the industry versus like being commission artist on like DeviantArt or. Lauren, are there any other sites people use for commissions in general?
There,
Like, or is it just
I
DeviantArt?
mean, there's so many now. I mean, and it's all not even so much of a site. Sometimes it's literally just, like ArtStation. I know some people post on jobs on ArtStation, so I guess some people try to sell commissions through there as well. Even Etsy, even people have sold their commissions through Etsy.
Yeah,
So
that's
I mean,
that's true.
there's a marketplace everywhere now, all over. Everything is a marketplace.
But yeah, you have to. I think it's about expanding your brain because when you're getting contacted for commissions via ArtStation or DeviantArt or whatever, usually your clients are coming to you because they already like your style and they want to see their character in your style or something specifically in your style, which is great. And but there's also the catch-22 where if you're in a different environment and you have to kind of structure your style a little bit, then you might be a little bit, again, fish out of water if you have to do that. So there's always the commission artists that, are doing great because people love their style. It's very aesthetically pleasing, but, that might be all they're going to be because they're just kind of used to being in that comfort zone of, people like what I do already. So there's no point to try something new. And I'm like, there's always a point to try something new, because I think it will open yourself more to opportunities, as well as you're not going to lose your original style if you try a different style. You can always go back, or if depending on what the assignment or the commission is, obviously.
Yeah, that's what my industry, my career has really been based on, always just trying to, hey, come up with something different. Like people will say, hey, we love what you did on Kim Possible, but we don't want that. We want something completely different, so that, they're not looking for that. But having that ability, again, if you want to be, especially a television character designer for television or games or apps or things like that, is more versatile, the better off you'll be as far as getting different sort of clients and different sort of jobs, instead of just having just the one style of maybe getting commissions, or just, oh, well, we're not really looking for that style for this TV show, so we're not even going to call them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, we don't know too much about that, but that's why you're here, Stephen. So I think we'll kind of bleed into Stephen's work a little bit. So I've heard the story before, but for the people who haven't, Stephen, can you describe how you broke in, and then we can tell the story about how you came up with or you helped contribute to the design and look of Kim Possible and how that happened. But so how did you originally break in?
Yeah, I mean, initially my whole career was, I was a caricature artist, and I was working in theme parks, going to different states doing caricatures. And then I started my own business doing caricatures, where I would do a lot of weddings, bar mitzvahs, corporations, do all things like that. And then I would set up at the shopping mall and do characters during the Christmas season. And then one thing led to another, again, meeting people, connections, so to speak. I met an artist who worked at Warner Brothers on a show called Freakazoid. And he was a storyboard artist, and he came to do a talk at a networking group that I was a part of. And I showed him my work, and he just said, hey, keep in touch. And it wasn't until about a year later where I got back in touch with him and said, hey, can I show you my work? And he invited me up to Warner Brothers back in 1997. And he looked through my portfolio and he said, I think they just fired one of their character designers, and they're looking for someone new. Let me take this up there. So we took my portfolio upstairs. The director wasn't there. We dropped it off. I met the line producer, and then the director looked through my portfolio, and then I think I got a call back within the next couple days of, hey, would you want to come take a test? And that's how the studios will usually operate. They're going to test you to see if you can fit in the show style. Again, this is where the versatility comes into play. And that show was called Hysteria at Warner Brothers. It was like a educational history, cartoon, fun little show. And they gave me a test, and they liked what I did. And that's how I got my foot in the door. So I never had any schooling or anything. I never went to school. But that's how I broke into the industry. And that was back in 1997. And then I've been in the animation industry ever since.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has ever been to the Warner Brothers lot, but it's very big and it's very nice. And they have I don't know if it's still there, but they have a Harry Potter like props setup thingy bob for all the touristy people. So I was only called on Warner Brothers like a couple of times for Central, but it's fun, Hollywood. So why don't you talk about I believe Bob Schooley just released on Twitter, or he found a bunch of like really really like old school like Kim Possible drawings for when they were first developing the show, where I think she was originally blonde, and it had a lot of Bruce Timm kind of inspired aesthetic. So why don't you talk about what part of the process you came into, and like how you kind of finalized the KP look?
Yeah, so
I guess.
On that show. So I was working at Disney on another show called what was it called? The Replacements.
Love that one.
It was a Disney show. So I was working on that show, and during that show, my director that I worked with on a previous show I was on called Clerks, the animated series, which was based on Kevin Smith's Clerks. He got in contact with me, said, hey, listen, there's a new show these guys, Mark and Bob, have created. Do you want to take a stab at drawing this Kim Possible? And I'm just like, hell yeah, just kind of get me off of this replacement show. I kind of didn't, I was kind of like...
Was this Chris Bailey?
Oh, no, it wasn't the... No, it was Weekenders, sorry.
Oh,
it was I was on the Weekenders,
Totally
not the
Bro
Replacements. Yeah, I was on the Weekenders at the point when Chris Bailey... Yeah, who I worked with on Clerks, the animated series, where I did the designs for that. He was my director, and he got in contact with me again and said, hey, dude, do you want to take a stab? I'm like, yeah, get me off of this Weekender show. And so I just started I read the script. They gave me a script and outline. I started drawing, and at first they were going for thinking that that's what they were wanting, was more of this kind of Bruce Timm action adventure type of look, and I was just bringing in a lot more of my caricature sort of drawing style, and also my kind of Al Hirschfeld sort of style or take that, Al Hirschfeld's an artist, a caricature artist who's passed away now, but was one of my huge influences in life growing up, just looking at his work. And then from there, just started doing my take and everyone was real happy with the way I was going. So they said, hey, do you want to come onto this full time? And then it was my job from the get-go just to start designing all these characters from scratch, just hundreds of drawings. Okay, Ron's got a naked mole rat, Rufus, and okay, so I'm sitting there designing what the hell's a naked mole rat? You know, coming up with all these ideas, and then working on all the villains, and you know, it's just and it was just such a great collaboration, you know, with Chris Bailey, and that's one of the guys. Like Chris Bailey is one of those artists. He was a feature animator, and he's one of those guys who can be is very decisive. You know, I mean, he's indecisive, but is very decisive. Like he's just kind of knows what he wants to see, and he has a real high bar of almost perfection, where he really, because of his background and his training, he just kind of wants the best. He just kind of wants people who know how to draw. He wants people who know how to act. He wants people that can bring something to the table, and so he can be very hard on people, and people have had that where he's too hard, he expects too much, is just too, you know, is never satisfied, and there's a quality about that makes whatever Chris Bailey gets involved in really great, you know, and that's where just working with Chris on the show was, you know, extremely hard but very rewarding at the same time, because he kept pushing me and he kept pushing me and he kept pushing me. And you know, there was a time where I remember the executives were coming into my cubicle and they were trying to tell me what to do. You should make her look more, do this. And Chris Bailey and Mark and Bob found out about that, and they were so pissed that the executives were trying to come in and just give their voice, and you don't let, you know, it's just like, don't you just hear what we have to say, sort of thing. You know, we're happy with what you're doing and everything, and don't let these guys bully you, you know, so to speak. And they were just so supportive, and working with Mark and Bob was so great, and they were always so happy. I love getting scripts on that show. I always get the script and looking at the new villains that were coming about and going, oh man, what's this guy gonna look like? And that was just a lot of fun. So it was really great. And then there was the great talented Eugene Salandra, who was a storyboard artist. And so he worked on the pilot of the storyboard and created such a great, did a great job on the script, on the pilot episode. But yeah, it was just such a blast of a show. It's one of my favorite shows to ever have worked on in my life.
Yeah, obviously I think, and it's like I've said, it's, I think why I love Disney Plus, like just as a concept so much, is it's reintroducing those properties, like even Kim Possible and Gargoyles and, you know, some of like the old school Disney Afternoon stuff to like very accessible, because a lot of those times, like I know that like the first 2 seasons of Kim Possible got released as a box office, but not till like at least like 5 or 6 years until after it was done, and then they never finished the last 2 seasons. And then a lot of times, like, the only way to find that stuff is if you're like touring really hardcore. So to have it on a platform that's just really accessible, I think is a really great move, just to make sure that, you know, people are, you know, the more accessible it is, the more people are going to watch it, and the more people that watch it, the more people are going to relate to it, because yeah, I don't know. Go get Disney Plus and go watch some Kim Possible on Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's great. But, it's so cool that, again, it's reintroducing it to a whole new generation, which is great.
Yeah, and Disney looks at the numbers on those too. They see what people are watching, how many are watching it. So I mean, and they take. I remember early on, I think they might still do it. Is they take suggestions for stuff they want to see. Like what do people want to see that isn't on the platform yet, that they want to see cycle in at some point. And so people have been pitching in, like, I want to see this show, I want to see this show, I want to see this movie, I want to, so they're listening. They want to know how to make the platform better, and what even shapes content going forward if they're making new stuff. So, and what gets rebooted, you know?
Yeah. I wonder how Kim Possible's actually doing. You know, I wonder if it's like they're surprised by it or not surprised by it. You know, because really, I mean, ever since after that show, there's been, just a lot of, different, the style is became very common with different shows, and also just the idea of a female sort of superhero type character became prevalent in many different shows after that. So I'm wondering if it's kind of so new anymore, where they're like, well, we kind of got all that stuff already. Otherwise they go, hey, this might be the perfect time to reintroduce her. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think even with
Go
the
ahead,
I was
Lauren.
gonna say with the live action movie, if anything, it probably pushed more people to go back to the cartoon. Like, let's see where it was really good.
But yeah, I like they did try really hard with the live action movie, but I think just the medium wasn't quite right for it.
Yeah.
But and I don't know that we can go into a whole podcast episode about like breaking down what was wrong with the live action movie, but but it exists now, and I guess if you just like read the script in your head and imagine all the original voice actors doing it, it's a little less bad. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I think I don't have any questions right now. Lauren, do you have any questions so far?
Well, I do, because it's funny because this whole time, while talking, I have been staring at my Stranger Things print from you, Steve.
Oh, right on.
As I recently got some artwork hung up on my wall, and one of them is your Stranger Things print, and so it's just like, because that's one of the most prominent staples in your designs is your shape language and how you utilize that in shaping the personalities of each character. I guess I want to say, like, for our audience members who don't know where to start in character design or art in general, can you tell us the importance of shape language in visual development and character design?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you kind of got to think about it like any language, just for a language. If it's Japanese, if it's Spanish, whatever it may be, there's a language, and it becomes distinctive. And I think when you're creating a show style, that's just something that one needs to think of, is like, what are the language of shapes that, more importantly, so that you can keep it consistent. That way, it doesn't feel like you're talking Spanish, but all of a sudden you go into Japanese, but then you go into English, and then you go into German. Can you imagine how just crazy that would be? And that's the same thing with design, is when you're designing, you're creating a language of shapes that you say that these shapes are going to be this language of the show that we're doing. So it may be, maybe there's a certain way that you draw everyone's ears, and there's a certain shape that goes in there. Or maybe everyone's clothes, they're very wrinkly, and you draw that, and then you got to make sure you keep that consistent. Or maybe there's no wrinkles in anyone's clothes, and you keep that consistent. Or there's a certain way that you treat fingers or fingernails, right? So you're creating a language, and that's what I've always done. That's what I'm always working on, is just trying to find my shapes, make them distinctive, make them clear. You want it to be clear. You don't want it to be confusing. You don't want a confusing language. You want a simple language. You want it to be clean. You want it to be clear. And you just know that there's animators in another country that need to learn your language. And they need to do it pretty quickly. And so you're going to give them a model sheet, and you're going to show them how to break down the shapes and really work on that. So the more defined you are in your language, the easier it is for other people to draw it 100 times, 1,000 times, because they've learned the language. And so I try to always simplify. My language is simplicity. I feel there's a lot of lines in design that you don't need. It's like, even when I was like working on designing some characters today, and I start throwing in lines, and I go, oh, that kind of looks cool, but you know what? It makes it too complicated. We don't need those lines. I don't need that in the shape language. So I eliminate them, and I go, did it help the design? Did it make it better? Did it make it worse? Is it even necessary? And you realize, no, I didn't even need that, and it still says the exact same thing. And that's what I'm always trying to find, is, especially in caricature, like when I do the Stranger Things or The Office or Parks and Rec, and I'm looking at caricature and doing design of people, I'm going, what's the essence? What makes that person them? Is it their eyes? Is it their smile? Is it their face shape? Is it, what's so distinctive about that person that makes it uniquely them for other people to identify and understand the language?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add too. I thought it was interesting. Stephen did this set, or Stephen said this at one of the panels. I went to, I think at TuneCon a couple, or maybe like 6 months ago. I don't remember when TuneCon
It was
was. But anyway,
November, right?
November. Okay, yeah, that was about 6 months
about
ago.
6 months.
Okay, so anyway, that Stephen watches like when he's designing caricatures for live action shows or just like a caricature based on a specific person. I imagine this comes from doing caricatures where you're just watching people for long periods of time, but he'll focus on like body language things and trying to incorporate sometimes that into the design a little bit, like how is that character speaking, how is that character walking, and then a lot of this ties into just general animation principles about defining a character's personality just by how they look and how they carry themselves, and maybe their walk is a little different than someone who's like more confident, and all that stuff kind of meshes together as far as like visual language and animation.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah. But I remember my point, but it's not too much on about Stephen, but I was just going to say as far as Kim Possible, I think Lauren, not you, Lauren. Lauren Faust talks about a lot of the time how she's very pro women in animation, both in the industry as well as behind in front of the camera, as far as a lot of female characters, female casts, and I think it's an interesting disposition because Lauren and I, co-host Lauren, we grew up in an era with characters like Kim Possible, in the forefront, where I don't think we felt that divide. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, and jump in, but I don't think we felt that divide as far as the lack of, female heroines, like both in our pulp culture, but even like in our animation culture, because we had characters like Kim Possible and a lot of female superheroes going in like the DC animated universe, for instance, and all that fun stuff. So, do you agree with that? I guess.
Me? Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah,
well,
you.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I think especially in the era we grew up in, it was where it seemed like entertainment was kind of starting to shift, and so as new creators and new designers and everybody was coming in, they had all their new ideas and the stories they wanted to tell, the stories that shaped them, the things that shape who they are, and they wanted to share that. And so when you have coming to the forefront more creators who want to bring more women to the front and who want to have more female oriented stories and superheroes, heroines, and just like and positive female role model type characters. I think I think it was like we pretty much grew up in a great era because we were that was at a time where I think for a lot of people it may have been new in how those stories were told and how they were conveyed. Um, but it was just like something where it kind of just was, it came natural to us, we kind of saw it and we're like, yeah, we can, like,
Yeah, girl power.
we can be super spies. We could be, we could go and kick butt and, and it's like, we could stop the world from being taken over by Draken. And so it's like,
I'm gonna say a thing. It's like, Lauren, do you mean we could do anything to do? Boo. Okay. There's my antidote. We can end now. No, I'm kidding.
But yeah, it was also just like even to loop it into shows like Danny Phantom, is where even if the girls weren't at the forefront, they were a huge part of like a major part of the cast, and having positive characters like that and well developed and even deep characters like Sam, to have her involved in the show and to have her be part of the storylines. It was like, and as I'm saying this, I'm like low key wearing my Danny Phantom shirt. So, but yeah, it's just like, yeah, I think with those kinds of stories, I think we pretty much, we pretty much had like one of the best eras for television, especially when it was like new content, new designs. It was a whole new frontier, especially after coming off of the 90s, which was the Wild West too. It was the Wild West of animation where anything was possible, because suddenly it was just like, you had your Ren and Stimpy, you had Rugrats, you had everybody coming out with Johnny Bravo, you had all of these new shows coming out. and trying to see how far they could go and what they could
And there was
try.
a limited, place to see him, right? So just remember when you guys were even watching probably Kim Possible or Danny Phantom, you weren't watching it online. You were watching it on TV. And so there's a whole different generation and different stuff happening there too, where there's so much content now. And so much of it is blending and merging. You don't even know where to start, what you're looking at. And, and it's all become, I think, just a mishmash where it doesn't feel as special sometimes anymore.
It used to be an event to watch a premiere and a finale. That's what I remember. And I remember even watching one Saturday mornings. I remember watching Saturday morning cartoons. I remember watching, coming home from school and watching the Kids WB block. I remember I remember Fox Kids. I remember all of that. Like, because it was something where you're like, okay, gotta be up at this time to catch this. Otherwise you miss it. Now it's always there.
Always there, yeah. Following you.
Everywhere you go. I just if we're gonna reminisce for a little bit, I just remember I remember that when the series finale of Kim Possible was coming out, they the Disney Channel did a whole marathon where it's for 3 or 4 days it was just Kim Possible from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and they wouldn't give away their time their prime time slots, obviously, but I thought it was just fun and going out with a bang. And then the other thing I remember is the finale got leaked online a week early, but I waited to watch it on TV. I don't know how it got leaked, but it did. So it was on YouTube.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't,
Yeah.
Wasn't it around the same time? Because 2007, I remember distinctly, because growing up, I'm if I caught any Disney Channel shows, it was when I'd go to a friend's house, because I didn't grow up with cable. It was around 2007 I got cable. And I got it just in the nick of time to watch the series finale. I think it was a triple hitter the summer 2007. It was Danny Phantom had its end, Kim Possible had its end, and then I think American Dragon Jake Long had its end too. All three were I think within the same few days. They all had finales. I'm just gosh, I'm just getting sucker punched 3 days in a row.
That's fine. Wow. So you're making me, so that was back in 2006 and stuff when Kim Possible aired?
It aired in 2007, the finale aired,
the
so
finale
not to make you feel old,
2007.
but
Dang, that's crazy. So what is that? That's 10, 11, 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah. Hard to believe.
That's what I'm saying. It's
still remember
13-year-olds now who get to watch it on Disney Plus, which is cool.
Yeah, and I'm just old man KP on YouTube saying I remember watching Kim Possible when it first came out, and now you guys go watch it on it's interesting that in some ways I'm reintroducing people who don't know about Kim Possible via the content, which makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Yay.
So it's our special moment. Our special moment.
Now I do have to ask,
Go ahead.
what were some of your favorite characters to design for Kim Possible?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Draken. I mean, really, it was all the villains. I loved doing the villains. Whenever I got a new script, that was the most exciting thing to see who the new villain was going to be, from Monkey Fist to, I don't remember all the names, but just...
If you describe them, I can name them for you.
Well, yeah, who was the Scottish guy? Duff Killigan.
Oh, that was Duff Killigan.
Duff Killigan. There was one guy who had a little Chihuahua pet, and he had a patch.
That was Gemini.
See, I wouldn't even have known that. Yeah, it's funny, because you don't know the name. I remember when I was doing senior, on that, I was having so much trouble designing him because I just couldn't get the character. And then they came to me. It was I remember it was a week and a half later, 2 weeks, and they're just listen, he's being voiced by Ricardo Montalban. I'm just I'm oh, okay, I got it. And then once I got that, I kind of nailed it from there, because I just made it look like Ricardo Montalban, and just gave essence. But yeah, sometimes I would get the script. Sometimes I would get a voice sound track, so that they record the voices before I got the design to do the design. Otherwise, sometimes I would do the design first, and they would try to find the voice to match the design. But
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
always fun. It was that the villains, were always the fun one.
Yeah, I imagine it just depends on who they're casting, or whether like the actor or actress came before, because or they just had a design and they cast someone after the fact. Like I remember they cast Ashley Tisdale as Chameleon. You get it, Chameleon. Yeah, so I imagine something like that. It was based on like her appearance versus just like someone who's just a more regular voice actor. Or
Yeah,
actress.
absolutely. Yeah, because I would get sometimes, Mark and Bob would, or some of the other writers, they would write in these characters, and then from there they knew who they kind of wanted, So then I would get a good description, like, she's gonna be more like this, or he's gonna be more like this, or it's based on that actor, or she's gonna be based on that actress. Yeah,
That's neat. Yeah, the villains I think were really fun. Draken and Shigo were the best, obviously. Lauren, who's your favorite Kim Possible villain?
Shigo.
Yeah,
I feel like I know that
Shigo.
sounds. I feel like I know that's like a default, but she really is the best. It's because she's sassy and she's, she's. I always love it when you have somebody who's supposed to be this like the partner in crime, and they're clearly the smarter one of the two, but they're put in the back seat to just sass them while they're there. So it's like, so it's like when she goes, it's totally meant to be the foil to Kim. So that's why I think it was great to have her involved, and to have Nicole Sullivan be her voice was just the icing on the cake. Having grown up with Mad TV and seeing her on there, and it was just like, yeah, she was the perfect person to be Shigo.
yeah. I love like finding. It's funny because I don't know what I hit on Instagram or something, but I just see so many cosplays. Not only do I see so many people drawing these characters all the time, which is just so cool. There's so much fan art of these characters, but also just the cosplays. And in my feed, I see so many Shigos and so many Kims, and it's just like every day. And even when I go to conventions, hopefully soon again, but every convention I go to, I always see Kim Possible and Shigo cosplays, and I'm just like, man, that's amazing. Because you work on a show, you do something, you never know what it's going to be, you never know what it's going to turn into. I've designed on lots of shows, and some fail, some come, some go, some don't even get past the pilot phase, and you just never know what is it that's going to hit and what isn't. And that's the gamble that the studios are always taking, hence the reason why they make all these remakes, because they're just like, well, it's a built-in brand. Shrek, we know we got the audience for that. Tom and Jerry, the Seven Dwarfs, Tasmanian Devil, Bugs Bunny, we know we can sell that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like the really the golden goose as far as Disney. I'm probably butchering that phrase, but anyway, is Disney is very good about having brand longevity, and like if you think about it, like Snow White came out in 29, 30, like something like that.
Late 1930s. It was like, to think to this day that Snow White still has longevity as a Disney princess and as a property, and so much so that each of the dwarves sometimes sell more merchandise than she does. Actually, it's not maybe, they do, especially Grumpy.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. That's the beautiful thing that I like about animation, is that these shows, they have this longevity for life, where like movies, sure, some of them do, but the majority of them never do. Like, you're not going to merchandise 97% of movies that are made, right? You're going to have those 3% of movies that ever get merchandise, and usually they're DC or Marvel or Disney or something else. And with animation, just you think about Snow White. Yeah, you go to Disneyland and you see all this Snow White merchandise still, and where this animation has this life that seems to last forever. If it's a hit, if it does well.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't do well, then people still remember it. I think more fondly than something than like live action.
Exactly.
In general.
Exactly. Like, you could probably name more animated properties than all the 50 billion shows that are on Netflix,
Mm-hmm.
where,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to remember all those, but you'll always remember the animated ones. Yeah.
Right. Right. I'm just, yeah, and I think that's just kind of the appeal of animation in general is like you're not sure, words are hard. You're not sure whether you're gonna like a character based on their live action appearance, but like if you see them animated, then your eyes are like drawn to their eyes or just the way they look or the color scheme, and then you can like, I think that's just why Disney works really well with children, because children don't really have to think whether they like a character. They can just be like, oh, I like the way they look. I was very much like that with Ariel when I was little, because I just liked her design and like the color palette, and all that, like.
That's
So
great.
well,
That's what that's
Disney.
what I do. It's funny that you kind of mentioned that, just following that. It's like with people ask me, they say, so when you're designing a character, what is one of your chief aims in that? And one of my chief aims in designing a character is I consciously think about cosplay. I think about if someone were to wear this costume, this character, how would they dress up as this character very easily, to where someone doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, but all of a sudden they can go to a Halloween party or they can show up at Comic-Con and all of a sudden they're that character. And so I'll always try to think of different design things that will make it, oh, I could see someone making shoes like this or making a t-shirt like this and adding that jacket, or maybe making hair that ends up looking like this. And that would be a good Halloween costume. And so I consciously think about that because I think it matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's getting to the point where I'm not sure if it's officially licensed or not, but there's like Kim Possible like straight up like adult costumes that you can buy on eBay for like $30, and so yeah, again, I don't know if they're licensed or not. They look licensed from what I can tell,
I
but
think it is, because there's a lot of Shigo outfits I've seen out there. They've kind of made them kind of almost like this weird tech looking thing. There's some really good one. I mean, the best ones are the people who make them themselves. But I think there is a whole license for the Kim Possible stuff. I actually just went to Disneyland. It was probably about 5 months ago or something, 4 months ago, and they had which I was surprised, a new Kim Possible little pin. You know how they have the pins that people
I someone got it for me because they saw it at Disneyland, and yeah. So for those who don't know, there was a new Kim Possible pin where it's basically like it's her mission outfit, and then you can pull it. It's like a see-through glass, and then you can pull it aside, and then it's her regular outfit. And this is like 2020 like new Kim Possible merch. But it's probably the only Kim Possible merch that's new besides the promotional stuff they made for the live action movie. But it's still something, so I won't complain.
Yeah. What I was surprised about was Kohl's. The store came out with Danny Phantom t-shirts, which was crazy. And I ordered some of those. I'm like, what? All these years, and what is going on here? It was so that was cool. I had to go buy some Danny Phantom t-shirts.
Yeah, Butch did give me the heads up on that. He's like, you should probably go to Kohl's and you should probably go buy some shirts.
Yeah. Yeah, Lauren works with Butch sometimes at work, so she'll tell me inside stuff, and I'm like, Lauren, I hate you. So,
what are you doing with Butch?
We're working on kind of NDA stuff, but mostly just building up a kids brand right now, entertainment brand. So, and starting with kids books. And so he's been kind of like consulting on that and helping us flesh out story beats and stuff like that for the kids books. And he's been awesome to work with. It's super knowledgeable. So it's just like, it's been really cool to even consider him like at this point. It's like we've been working together for a handful of months now, since like October, and it's like, wow, I'm actually working with him, the guy who's like made my shows from my childhood, and who's like, wow. So
I can feel the drool from here, Lauren. Just calm down a little bit.
It was just but it's like the starstruckness has like died down, but it's still, every now and then you kind of think like, wow, how did I end up here?
Yeah. Butch was another great guy to you work with for sure. Like from different people. I mean, again, he's one of those guys where he's like with Chris Bailey. He has his unique personality and everything, and you just start to understand people, and you understand how they work or what their expectations are. And yeah, he was fun to work with. He was great.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, yeah, with kind of like segueing into Danny Phantom, because I mean, you basically kind of worked with his style a little bit, but you also made it your own. Tell us a little about your design process for Danny Phantom.
Yeah, a lot of it was where we would get the script and then from there, again, just start churning out just a bunch of ideas and see what works and then take it up there and show it to Butch and then see what he kind of thought about it, which was really just part of the fun process. Again, every time we got a script and even from the get-go, was just churning out tons of drawings, showing it to Butch, and then Butch saying, "Yeah, I kind of like the direction." Otherwise, he'd be like, make that guy taller, or he'd give certain suggestions, as to how he thought maybe the characters might look, and that that always just kind of varied, but it was just again very easy sort of process, and just experimenting initially with Sam. I remember when I was designing Sam, what I really wanted was I wanted her ponytail to change in every episode. So when I initially designed her, she had like, her little black thing that's above her head, and then it would be purple, or then it would be green. And, those are certain ideas that you do that don't make the cut or anything. And then again, even when I designed Sam and like did her costume, I was thinking, simplicity. What would someone wear? How simple could they make this for a cosplay,
Cosplayer.
so that's why I just like drew that little purple thing, just boom, done. The purple on black, good, you're done. Little in the skirt, just quick simple things. Yeah. And then what would happen is just a lot of times, because Butch's sensibility was with the Fairly Odd Parents sort of style that George Goodchild and Bob Boyle, when they were creating and design, were doing a lot of that stuff, there was a sensibility, and that was Butch, but that kind of became Butch's sensibility, and it became that sort of the big eyes and that sort of face. And we knew with Danny Phantom that I never wanted it to look like or be like Fairly Odd Parents. And so I don't know if you guys have ever seen any of the early development, some of the earliest stuff that was going on, but there was a little bit more of there was more of a Kim Possible, because I was still working on Kim Possible at the time. And I was working on, and then it went over to Nickelodeon. So there was a lot of sort of that organic, I guess, maybe sort of thing that I put in the drawings, but Butch would be like kind of, it got to be more going into the Fairly Odd Parents. So then it kind of became more like this older version of the Fairly Odd Parents style, just myself and the other designers. So initially it was me. I was hired first on that show, and then another artist by the name of Shannon Tyndall came on, just an amazing artist. And we got to share office space, working together, splitting up, working on picking which designs we're going to design and work on. And then Shannon left, and then another great artist came on, Ben Balistreri. So we were working together for longer than we were in high school, sitting in the same office, just because there were so many designs that needed to be done. And then we would just work on it, show Butch. Butch would go yay or nay. And then from there, we'd do our version. Then it would go to the cleanup department, and then they would do a cleanup line on it. And then it would go to the color department, and they would do the final colors. And sometimes we would offer our color sensibility, because I think that's important too in design. And then they would either decide if they wanted to stick with that or not.
Yeah. It's so much goes into the process of like fleshing out something that ends up becoming a landmark when you just don't know it
Yeah,
yet.
exactly. You don't know. We had no idea. We didn't know what was going to happen with Danny Phantom. Again, you're working on it. Butch is excited about it. We're excited about it, but you never know what's going to hit. Like then Butch did Bunsen and the Beast, and and then that didn't. Like, well, why didn't that? That's the same guy that created Fairly Odd Parents, created Danny Phantom. Why didn't that one work? And it's just like some things work and some things don't. You just never know. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Test audiences and all that stuff. Corporate stuff.
Yeah, but it's the people. You could go through all that, but it's the end of the day, the people, right? The consumers, the young kids, the older kids. Am I gonna keep watching this and watch it over and over again and make it the hit that it ends up becoming? You don't know. You don't know. A test group will never tell you that. You'll never know in a test group.
Right. That's fair to say, because I think the taste, especially of kids, but just in the general pop culture phases, or taste is always evolving. So you can try to be ahead of the curve, but you don't really know what the curve could be like. 3 years, 5 years down the line.
No,
So
never. Speaking, I just throw this. I remember when I was working on Kim Possible, they were telling me I need to think about what kids are going to be wearing, high school kids, a year from now. Because by the time the show comes out, it's going to be a year later. And so what are kids going to be wearing? And it's like, I don't know. I was looking through all these. I remember going to the Barnes and Noble, and I was buying so many fashion magazines, and I was looking at all these teen magazines and looking at hairstyles and looking at things and realizing, and plus Alan Bodner being a great art director, he was just his color sensibility and everything, but just knowing that, jeans are always going to stay popular, kind of, the crop top thing was kind of big, but I knew it was kind of like big in Israel and everything too. I was thinking of what Israelis, because I had been to Israel and thinking about what Israeli teenagers or youth wears, because they seem very hip and very cool. And I was looking at that. So I was just looking at fashion all the time. Again, another role of the character designer is constantly be looking at fashion, constantly be looking when you're out and observing. Look what people are wearing. Go when you're at a restaurant, when you're at the convention. Wherever you are, you always got to be drawing, even though you're not drawing. And I think that's one of the key components to being a character designer.
yeah, it's hard. You kind of got to be the fortune teller a little bit. Lauren, do we have any more questions that you think we haven't covered yet?
Shoot, I'm trying to think. I guess maybe a final one. What would be, I guess you say, where are the best resources for inspiration? We have to discuss that, like, studying from life and from your surroundings, but like maybe some artists that have inspired you, aside from Al Hirschfeld, that you also recommend in order to study character design and kind of like what shaped you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there was one of my greatest inspirations. He just recently passed away, actually last week, was a man by the name of Mort, M-O-R-T, Drucker, D-R-U-C-K-E-R, and he was a Mad Magazine artist and caricature artist, and just one of the best caricature artists in the world. I ended up having the fortune of making a documentary on him. I was able to go over and film him, and I have that on Vimeo now, a documentary film on him. And he kind of taught me just to observe life. And I always saw it in his artwork. I saw the expressions, the mannerisms, and it really drew me to the understanding of how important it is to constantly observe from life. And it's not just life drawing, but again, you're sitting at that convention, you're looking at people, you go to the park, you're at the airport, you're at the restaurant, you notice the chef, you notice the waitress, you notice the couple that just walked in and sat down and how their conversation, and you watch TV and you look at the mannerisms and you look at commercials, and you constantly, you look at the news and you look at the mannerisms of people and how people stand and how people speak. And it's just really, and what Mort Drucker always said to me, and I look back now and go, he was absolutely right. And it was all about observation. and just looking at people. And that's what you want to do as much as you can. If you want to be a storyboard artist, if you want to be an actor, if you want to be an actress, if you want to be a voice artist, just observe people, because this is what's going to make you understand people and how to draw someone in that certain pose and give that feeling, because that's what people miss in a lot of their work and in their acting, in their dance, in their music, in their whatever they're doing is feeling. How do you teach feeling? Well, you don't teach feeling. I can teach you how to do certain things. I can teach you maybe how to see. I can teach you how to read music. I could teach you how to maybe act in front of people. But what really comes through at the end of the day is how your experience that you can bring in to your own personal observations. I observed that person be upset, and what did it feel like, and how can I put that back into my work? Because I feel that's what we will always respond to as humans, is feeling. We feel the cat, we feel the anger, we feel the sorrow, we feel the, whatever it may be, we feel it. And this is what's so important for the artist, is go beyond just seeing with your eyes and just see with your mind, and allow your mind to do the seeing. It's not just an optical thing. It's like, wow, whoa, look how that person did you just see that? Not just see that, but did you feel that? Wow, man. And that's why we can look at a YouTube video, we can look at a movie, we can look at something that's going to make us cry. We can look at something that's going to make us angry. We can look at something that's going to give us emotions. And again, it's not based on what we're actually physically seeing as much as it is what we're feeling. So how can you bring feeling into your artwork, into your acting, into your music? And I think if you can do that, that's where you're going to start to truly improve upon whatever skill set you want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to end. And I was just gonna I always recommend just people study silent films too, because when you're trying to study, I think when you're trying to study like how people emote via, again, nonverbal dialogue, and studying how Charlie Chaplin can kind of emote and have expression without saying things in general, then that's kind of the test of the true artist, is can you get that across without saying a word? And obviously the newer version of that is Samurai Jack, and there's very minimal dialogue, and there's getting so much passed via just visual language. So
Primal's a good one too.
I would just
Primal, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I would advise artists as well just to watch movies or commercials or anything just on mute, and sit there with your sketch pad. It doesn't even have to be a silent movie or anything else, and just see if there's something you notice about that person's mannerisms or that acting, and try. So just watching on mute is a great way to learn too.
Yeah. Okay, Stephen, where can people find you if they want to find you or throw money at you?
Yeah, so you can find me. A lot of my stuff, my portfolio, my store, all that good stuff is on SilverToons, TOONS.com. And then I also have a YouTube channel. If you just type in Steven Silver with a PH, you'll find I do these art talks and that. And then I'm teaching a lot of courses on Schoolism.com, and I just started a new course on there where I'm teaching about observation and so you get to draw along with me. It's called Character Design Workout, and every day you get to draw along with me as I'm showing you stuff, and you get to do your own style, whatever you're going to do, but we draw for about 8 to 20 minutes just to have a workout every day.
Yeah, I think that's obviously important. Just keep on drawing every day. I say as I haven't touched my tablet in like a month.
Meanwhile, I draw every day, but I need drawing breaks to draw for me.
That's so much work, Lauren. But yeah, again, if you're new, we have episodes every Wednesday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard on SoundCloud or iTunes or Spotify or whatever, and then the YouTube versions usually go up at 4 p.m. Eastern if we don't screw it up somehow. Again, Thank you, Stephen, for coming. Personally, you're a huge inspiration of my personal style. Every time I draw an OC, everyone's just like, it looks like Kim Possible. And I'm like, I know, I can't help it. So,
Well, thanks for having me, guys. This was fun. This was a fun, just open conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
yeah.
joining us. And likewise, you have been a huge inspiration to my art style and design flow as well. Because it's like every time I look at things, I'm like, okay, what shapes are in there? What can I look at somebody and have like, how do I make them into this amalgam of shapes and lines?
Yes.
So, anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. Hopefully, this was educational, which is the important thing. And we'll see you next week. If you feel free to join us, and if you're new, again, we have a good chunk of episodes already released on the social, like one of the places I described already. So feel free to archive and catch up. What else are you gonna do? It's coronavirus. So, thanks again, and see you guys next time.
Bye,
And
guys.
we can end.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Communication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Communication.